Guys, it's Quana back again with another review. Hope you guys are doing awesome. So I have just got finished watching season 4 of Stranger Things, volume 1. Of course, volume 2 hasn't been released yet, but I decided I wanted to go ahead and do a episode by episode kind of recap and review, just so that those of you who are maybe pacing yourself a bit more can be able to follow along. And I will say something that I've been saying a lot in my videos recently is this: I wish that Netflix would make the decision to take some of their larger, more marketable franchises and space them out. I know that they really encourage binge watching, but with a show like Stranger Things, especially with a show that has so many Easter eggs in it, they really could capitalize more on fandom by spacing it out. But that's just my 2 cents. Before we get started into the review and before I go into any spoilers for this episode, do me a favor, and if you enjoy the content on this page, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. All it does is let you know whenever I post a new review, and if you plan to follow my Stranger Things series, then you'll definitely want to get in on that. This first episode, called the Hellfire Club, listen, I did not do a rewatch of seasons 1, 2, and 3. And so just to kind of go ahead and give you my quick take, I've been watching Stranger Things since season 1. I've never reviewed it on the channel, although I have reviewed other kind of horror-based, suspense-based shows. I don't usually dabble into horror film that much. I'm a big scaredy cat. I like my horror in novel form, but I do love Stranger Things, of course. How could I not? Because I'm such a huge fan of Stephen King, and as the Duffer Brothers will tell you, the creators of Stranger Things, they are huge fans as well, and there are nods to Stephen King all over this show. So I've definitely been watching it since day one, but because it is a binged show, sometimes it's kind of hard for me to find the time to watch it along when everyone else is watching it, and so then I kind of feel like my window has passed. I decided to go ahead and binge watch all 7 episodes that have been released so far, and I wanted to kind of go ahead and bring this to you guys because I have a lot of thoughts and I really enjoyed this season. And I will say that for those of you who are maybe on the fence or you haven't gotten into this series as of yet, yes, you do need some basic knowledge of what's come on before. However, I felt like this season was so much more better paced than previous seasons. There's some seasons that I felt like are very slow, very drawn out, dealt more in the suspense and less in the horror. And this one, I felt like it's seeming like it's leaning more toward the horror genre, which I really enjoy. I just felt like I didn't feel like there were really as many dull moments. I felt like I was looking forward to every moment so that I could see another piece of the puzzle. And I felt like there were some times when previous seasons went through, I would kind of lose focus or I would get tired and fall asleep, and I did not feel that way at all with this season. So I definitely enjoyed this season more. Quick recap, because if you are following the show, this picks up about 6 months after the Battle of Starcourt, and we've kind of gotten our gang of Stranger Things family members kind of scattered across the map. So we've got, if you remember correctly, the Byers family along with Elle have relocated to California. We've got the Wheelers along with Steve and Robin and Dustin and the Sinclairs all still in Hawkins. And then if you watched that end credit scene, you kind of know that there is someone who may have been thought to have been dead, but actually is likely not to be dead. And we find out more about that in this episode. And that's Hopper. And of course, we know that he's in Russia, or at least heavily alluded to him being in Russia. I love the fact that because they spread everyone out, they really leaned very heavily on the theme of friendship, bonds, and isolation. And we see a lot of our characters really struggling with not only the change that our main characters are now in high school and the trials and tribulations that go into being a high school freshman at that, but then also just the isolation as we see Elle really struggling to find her way, to struggle to be accepted. And this is a young woman who, we've seen her through the past few years. She's grown up in a lab, so she's literally like a guinea pig that's been let loose into the world, and she doesn't fit in. And the one thing that allowed her to fit in back in Hawkins was her friends and her family, and now she really doesn't have that to lean on. She's just by herself. We saw in season 3 she really developed a really close bond with Max, and having another girl around really helped give her that support, helped her to understand what it meant to be a girl, and now she doesn't have that. I love what they seem to be doing with Elle's arc in this season, and it's really giving me like a lot of Carrie vibes, a lot of inspiration from like Carrie and Firestarter. Stephen King does a lot with like adolescence and going through puberty, but I really felt a lot of Carrie vibes with Elle's arc as she's dealing with these bullies, this girl Angela who there's bullies, and she's dealing with like trying to accept being gone away from Hopper, and Hopper being dead and all of that kind of stuff. And then back in Hawkins, I think that's what keeps me getting tongue-tied is Hawkins, Hopper, the H's and the A and the O. We're dealing with Max, of course, dealing with the devastating loss of, her brother and witnessing all of that. And she's kind of isolated herself away from the group, away from her boyfriend. They broken up. You know how I feel about, I love me some Caleb McLaughlin. So, that's like my favorite character. And so they're apart, and she's dealing with all of the fallout from that. But then also Lucas is on the basketball team, and he's trying to, gain some popularity, trying to fit in a little bit more, doesn't want to be a nerd, doesn't want to be an outcast. And he's isolating himself a little bit away from Dustin and Mike, who are part of the Hellfire Club. Now, this is where we get the title of the episode. The Hellfire Club is a D&D club run by a new member to the squad, Eddie, who is a senior who should be in college by now. This dude is hella old. And they are trying to have a campaign on the night of Lucas's big tournament match. It's crazy. And so you're just dealing with a whole lot of just feelings of isolationness and things of that nature. And those feelings really that theme just really carries throughout this episode. Now, going into some heavy hitter spoilers, because right now it's been kind of spoiler light. So this is like where, if you haven't had an opportunity to watch the episode, you really want to turn around, go back the other way, and come back later after you've watched it. The way that this episode is framed is so nice, because you start with a really heavy, impactful intro sequence, which we get a flashback of Dr. Brenner and a young 11, and it seems like 11 has like slaughtered everyone at the Hawkins lab. Now, where this lies into, going back to season 2 and 3, season 2 with her meeting Callie is a little interesting. So we don't really know where all of that fits in per se, but it seems as though she has slaughtered like almost everyone in the lab. And that's how the episode starts. And that was just such a powerful way to start the episode, because you just go straight into like a really horrifying moment that sets the tone of the episode and gives you this mystery of like, why did 11 do this? What happened? Was there a moment where her powers were dark? What is going on? And then we jump into the present with this really beautiful narration of Elle writing this letter to Mike. I thought that was just such a smart way to catch us up with what's going on with her, how everyone is feeling, how she's feeling emotionally. She's trying to put on a good front for Mike and make him think that things are going well, although things are not really going well. But I really enjoyed this strategy of her writing this letter to him, and this kind of setting the stage for just characters who aren't really telling their full truth because they're trying to protect the people who around them and those who they care about. And we see a lot of that echoed in Max's behavior as well. Something is going on with Max. She's experiencing headaches. And once we get into the villain or the creature of this season, it really comes out that she's also possibly being one of the characters who is being haunted, or at least something is going on with her where she is not with the group. And we see a connection between her and Elle through that Kate Bush song. Yeah, Kate Bush, I'm telling you, all these shows that have been like diving into like either A's aesthetic or just drawing on Kate Bush's discography. I know her bank account is loving it. Everything from season 2, episode 1 of The Handmaid's Tale, playing her version of this woman's work, and now we have this Running Up the Hill. That song was just such a beautiful tie-in to show like just the struggle that Elle and Max are going through. Mad Max. I love me some Mad Max. Can we just talk a little bit about Sadie Sink? And she is really shining this season, at least in this episode. Now, the episodes are considerably longer, so be prepared for that. It feels like mini movies. Another good reason for Netflix to have made a better decision. I don't know why they are just so tied into this idea of giving all of the content all at once, but fans of major shows, HBO is doing weeklies, Disney is doing weeklies, and they're not missing a beat. I don't know when Netflix is going to realize that is probably the thing that is hurting them the most. But it would have been such a smart decision to do that. I digress. Going back into, we get a couple of new characters. One I talked about, Eddie, who is heading up the Hellfire Club, but the other is a cheerleader by the name of Chrissy Cunningham. And Chrissy actually, is the head cheerleader. So one would think that she would be a really stuck-up character. Maybe she would be like an enemy or opposite of one of our main characters. No. We find out early on that Chrissy is being hunted by the big bad of this season, and it's tormenting her. Now, there's an attachment that she has to Eddie, and there's this beautiful scene where they're in the woods and they're talking, and they both are so much more relatable in this sequence. And I think this sequence was such a smart thing to do. This scene was so smart because Eddie, when we first introduced to him in the cafeteria, he's very flamboyant. He's very much like kind of out there, outrageous, shock value. It seems like he's putting on airs. This is him kind of more stripped down, softer. He thinks that there might be something behind this girl. Like, you can tell that there's some chemistry between the two of them. And I was really rooting for, like, okay, Eddie's going to have a little love match, and she's going to leave the high school jock for the outcasted, nerdy boy. But alas, we find out that Chrissy is being plagued by this creature, and she goes to Eddie to get some drugs to help her to, like, stay awake. And this is the end scene of the episode, which I thought was so well done. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but a couple of things came to my mind. So there's the first sequence where we're introduced to the fact that she's being haunted. She's in the bathroom. It seems like maybe she's like, maybe having a bulimic moment or something like that. But then we find out that she's crying because she's being haunted by her memories and her nightmares. And there's this voice that is haunting and taunting her. And it gave me Freddy Krueger vibes as soon as I heard it. I was like, oh yes, this is giving me Robert Englund in his like peak era vibes, haunting her. We're introduced to this creature, and it has the ability to paralyze its victims and put them in like a nightmare dream state, very much like Freddy Krueger and Nightmare on Elm Street. And you cannot tell me they definitely were pulling from this in that in scene where we get Chrissy being levitated and pulled to the ceiling. It echoed that very famous scene. I think it was Johnny Depp's scene where he's killed in Nightmare on Elm Street in the original version. They upped the ante in the way in which they do it. It was giving me very much Nightmare on Elm Street. It was giving me very much like Midsommar, you know. I was like mesmerized and frightened in this sequence. And so I'm really looking forward to talking to you guys about how the rest of the season is going to pan out. Couple of side notes. The scene, I couldn't help it. So I've watched episode 1, I think like 3 times now. And when Chrissy is levitating, I couldn't help but notice her Reebok Classics. Guys, I wanted some Reebok Classics so much when I was a kid. I felt like all the cool girls had at least one pair of Reebok Classics, and they really weren't that expensive back in the day, but I don't know why. I just never had a pair of Reebok Classics. So I was going for this whole like 80s fit. And guess what I invested in? A pair of Reebok Classics. And so I just was like, as soon as I saw that scene, I was like, yes, I definitely am going to like pull out my MTV shirt, my acid wash jeans, and put on my Reebok Classics for when I watch. I better hide that logo for when I watch the remaining episodes from this season. All right, so let me know down below in the comments if you've watched episode 1, what you thought about it, what were some of your highlight moments. The soundtrack this season is already giving. It's already giving. When they played The Object of My Desire, when Steve and Robin are in the car talking about their love lives, that was perfect song for that moment. So the soundtrack is giving. Joyce is on this, you know, crusade where she's going to be the one to go and find Hop. I'm not mad at that, and I always love Joyce and Maury together, but I'm really living for Elle and Max's storylines and really wanting to see what's happening with them. And ultimately, guys, right now, everyone is separated. They're gonna have to somehow get back together, because if we're getting this isolationist theme, one would only think that we're going to get the ending of this, or the reveal of like the strength of your friends and your family and love overpowering or conquering all. I don't know. I just
message.
feel like it's like a given that we're going to get that, right? So let me know down below in the comments what you thought about this episode, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Toodles.